Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey everyone, checking in on the MJ space. A lot of red out there today. The story is the rumor about TRST is true. I'm not going to go into depth about it, but if you are interested, get on Google. You'll learn all about it. So it was a bearish reaction, down 20-some%. We had the gap down open. Certainly not a good look for the sector as a whole. Probably more implications on Canadian MJ than US MJ, but generally shady things going on or big surprises that remind people, oh yeah, I can lose 20% overnight. Never good for a sector. So CGC, we have a very clear daily downtrend. Lower highs is all I care about. If we're still in lower highs, that's all I care about. So 44.17, 43.94, another one, 41.65, and most recently 41.07. That one bull reaction, zero follow through. And that's the theme of the sector this summer so far. Solid bull moves, nice bounces, but no continuation. Solid bull move, no continuation. So if the bulls can hold 38.08 and break 41.07, I'll start to perk up and pay attention. But if we do not break 41.07, I don't care what's going on, because whatever's going on is the bulls not proving any strength to me. Looking at Cron continuing to fade down after its bear break. If we see a break of 14.83, there's a gap to fill at 14.45. And as far as resistance goes, again, anything under 16.45 is just a lower high. So the bulls aren't going to prove anything to us anytime soon. Even if we do get a short-term bounce, we're just going to look for that lower high to form. And it's going to be a while before we get a trend change on the daily time frame for these Cron bulls. APHA, nice decent lower wick there. Again, we're watching this 2-day equilibrium, which has been forming for a month. And if we're drawing these levels, it's a high, low, lower high, higher low, lower high, and we're scouting a higher low compared to 635. If we can change this hourly trend, we had a solid bounce at the end of the day, but if we can change the hourly trend, that is the first indication that our higher low of 661 has formed. We'll need a bit more follow through, but that is something to be keeping an eye out for. And if that were the case, you could put your stop under 661. Personally, I'm just patiently waiting for this pattern to break. I'm not going to try and get fancy and play within it, especially when we're playing counter. If you're looking bullish, you're playing counter what the sector momentum has been as a whole. Individual names have done their own thing, but not the sector as a whole. So we need to see a bounce, clear some resistances, and if we can get over 681, then I would say, all right, our higher low is now set at 661, and we would look for a lower high compared to 721. ACB still pulling back significantly. We've got our low, high of the bounce, scouting a higher low to form compared to 701. The more oversold we get on the short-term time frames heading towards 701, the better the odds of that support holding at least initially. So the 4-hour RSI right at 40, the hourly RSI cooled off at the end of the day. But if we were to get another red day tomorrow, that would put us down approaching a few percent away from 701 in oversold conditions. So that would be a potential area that I would make a play off of this support. But again, the safe way is to just say, cross your arms and say, I'm not doing anything until the bulls prove something to me. And while you might not nail bottoms, that'll definitely eliminate a lot of risk. TLRY lost the daily uptrend. So we had our high of the bull move, low of the pullback, lower high, and a lower low now set. So when we lose the daily uptrend, that now means zoom out to the weekly chart. And it's a bit tricky because for names to change their weekly trends, we essentially have to lose daily uptrends. So it's hard to gauge, is this loss of the daily uptrend a red flag, or is this normal weekly consolidation that we know we're going to need for the higher low and higher high on the weekly time frames to develop? So our low is 34.25, the high is 51.03. The bulls must hold 34.25 and break 51.03 to change the weekly trend. The sooner they are able to pull that off, the sooner they're able to pull off a higher low, the better, because the closer we are to resistance, the better the odds of breaking resistance. If we bottom out at 44, it's going to be way better odds for the bulls than if we bottom out at 39, which would be way more distance that the bulls would have to cover. So at this point, we have a new resistance of 48.48. And again, just clear lower highs, 51.03, 49.49, 48.48. Have to break that pattern. And the bulls would love to see a green day tomorrow because that would be a scenario of losing the daily uptrend but not getting much bear follow through. If we get a solid red day and a drop to 44 tomorrow on solid bear volume, that's a much different scenario than a green day after losing that support. OGI stood out as a lead bull today with solid volume and a significant bull move up. Resistance from here is 749 and 765. So those two levels to be watching. Again, watching for the potential cross, the bull cross of these exponential moving averages. And now that we're shifting the momentum on the daily with a clear trend change with our higher low now at 625, so we can say anything above 625 when we consolidate, we'll keep the uptrend intact. The weekly time frame is what we care about. 844 is the resistance level. Anything under 844 is a weekly lower high. So this is the range that we're now within. The bulls have to be cautious of a head and shoulders pattern. The last thing they want to see is a rollover on this bounce to head back down towards $6 because that would be a more convincing bear break on the longer term time frame. Best case for the bulls is to make their way up into the upper $7 range and to be an equilibrium setup on the weekly time frame and not a potential head and shoulders setup. Hexo still weak, fading back down. 503 support about to be tested. Then we have a couple other support levels nearby. But again, anything under 554 is just a lower high with the bulls proving absolutely nothing to us. So we can be picky and wait for the daily lower highs to break before we even consider looking bullish on a lot of these names. So the big gap down, I'm using CTST rather than TRST because of volume and pre-market, most notably pre-market. And I bought pre-market today, and it was the RSI on the hourly was at the point where I was comfortable making an initial entry at 399, just under 4 psychological, and my game plan was then to add in the 370s if we kept dropping. So again, knowing that I'm willing to scale in prevents me from having fear entering in the face of weakness on these bounce plays. So I entered at 399. I sold half pre-market at 409. So locked in a quick 2.5%. And then again, as I always say, that makes me so much more comfortable because my break even on that trade then becomes 389. So, and again, it's the same thing. I only entered one position. I still have more capital I'm willing to put into this trade. My break even is 389, and I'll add what I sold at 409 back in the 370s if we keep dropping. So I just sat tight because we didn't see much significant further weakness, and then I ended up selling 416 on the initial morning bounce, locked in that profit, and then didn't do anything else because of the weak close. I do anticipate the potential of a gap down open tomorrow because of that weak close, and I'll be interested in playing a bounce yet again. Once the selling pressure from this news is over, we will see a very easy 10% bounce, in my opinion. So it's just patiently waiting for that. And what we're looking at is if we get a bear break tomorrow under 382, the more of a significant gap down, the more I'll be looking to potentially scale in again. But it all depends on what the RSI levels are and if they cool off or not. The 4-hour RSI is cooling off a little bit in extended hours. So as far as previous price levels to be going off of, we're now looking down at all-time lows. Well, I don't want to say that just yet. Very little price history is what I meant to say. 350 is the next clear support level. So if we drop down tomorrow, 350 is definitely a level to be watching. And again, if you're not comfortable with oversold bounces, wait for a change in trend. Wait for a 5-minute change in trend, a 15-minute change in trend. Wait for some kind of momentum shift. I personally love not waiting for that shift. I love playing those bounces. So I'm going to be watching tomorrow. The more weakness, the more aggressive I will be looking to play another bounce. VFF, and obviously this is a big long-term hit. We're not going to shake this downtrend on the weekly time frame anytime soon, and I would just be looking for short-term oversold bounces personally. So VFF daily inside bar, we have to break 1178 to try and give the indication that our 2-week higher low has formed. We've been watching this 2-week equilibrium. If we get that bull break, we'll say our 2-week higher low has formed, and we'll then be looking at 1279 as the next major resistance level, and we'll look to stay in this tightening pattern into August if we do indeed form that 2-week higher low. T-God. Lack of follow-through is a red flag for T-God. Not a huge red flag, but definitely wanted to see more green than this. And we can very clearly see The 324 is the most important support level with a triple bottom at that level right now. Break 324, big red flag for no follow through. And the bulls have to break 334 and 337 to try and get some continuation. And 342 resistance is right there as well. So while we broke the lower highs, we are not in a daily uptrend because this move came off of the low. 309 was the low. We need a clear daily higher low and higher high to change that trend and to have any meaningful follow through on this falling wedge that did break bullish. GWPH, wanted to highlight this one because I got stopped out and I took a small loss. So I made an entry last week on this candlestick. I believe my average was in the 171s or so. And I stopped out when this support level broke. And that's my way of keeping my losers small. It was less than a day loser. It was probably a half of a day loser. So I made that up in the CTST trade this morning. And that's how I stay ahead of the game. And that's how I keep progressing forward. And I could look at this and say, oh, I shouldn't have stopped out. But how many times are we going to break that support level and then keep following through? The last thing I want to do is enforce bad habits of not exiting when my trade game plan said to exit in hopes that we see a complete turnaround like this. So this is one that I just chalk up and say, it broke support and then quickly turned around. Better luck next time. I don't care. To be completely honest, would I rather be in a position still? Yes, but honestly, this happens so many times that I just don't care. And I made more on CTST than I lost on GWPH. And so now I'm going to go into tomorrow with a fresh, clean slate. And I have lost interest in GWPH at this point. Still watching the weekly time frame, but things are getting so choppy on the daily that it is less interesting to me. Another point is after I got stopped out at GWPH, opportunity cost is also something. So I then went looking for another trade. And I said, all right, I got one less thing that I need to be watching as far as swing trades go. And then KSHB, thanks to a member posting, was brought to my attention. And at that point, we were at 525, which was the high of today. And it's also the high of this bull move. And I bought 525 to break that resistance. And we very quickly went over 1%. So I was instantly green on the trade. I would not have taken the trade if I had not have stopped out of GWPH. And again, I offset some of that small loss with a win. I took half of my profit on KSHB from 525 at 535, a very quick 1.8% move. And I'm still holding half in a swing position, but I'll probably exit that tomorrow. Break even for the trade is now 515, so pretty comfortable. And again, not really concerned at this point with where we stand. I'll look to lock in some more of that small profit. But the bottom line is being able to completely emotionally detach from GWPH. And honestly, once I exited, I didn't look at it again for the rest of the day. And if I was there and looking at it and saying, oh man, I should have held, I would have missed this KSHB trade. So it's so important to just completely throw it in hindsight. And while it's important to go back and learn from your mistakes, I'm not saying completely forget about the trade, but wait till the close and then go back and, reassess things you could have potentially done different, learn from those mistakes. But again, don't let it bog you down and miss other opportunities because you're lamenting, because that doesn't matter. You're not going to get anything by watching a ticker that you're not in or not planning on entering move. IIPR, daily high or low of 119.34 is the most important support. We are close to losing the daily uptrend, and we are very due for weekly consolidation, so bulls do want to be a bit cautious. Weekly consolidation will certainly anticipate a higher low will form, so no red flags with that. But if we break 119.54, the momentum will shift, which has been clearly favoring the bulls for the last 5 weeks. That would change. So that's the key support level, and resistance is a double top the past 2 days at 130.90. Curaleaf, I entered a small starter position on Curaleaf today. Reason being, if it is a falling wedge, I don't want to wait for a bull break and big bull volume to try and compete with other traders on a less liquid name. So I have a small starter. I will exit if 887, the low breaks, and I'm looking for a break of 935, which would change the hourly trend. You can see it's an hourly equilibrium. Breaking 935 would be a clear bull break, and then I would be focused after 935 up to the most important level for me short term is 978. We've got the 4-hour exponential resistances still giving the bulls some trouble, and the daily as well. But it was enough of a shift that I wanted to give myself a more higher risk, higher reward entry before the bull break occurs. So we'll see if that ends up playing out or not. And if not, I will exit for a pretty small loss. OH, I exited today. Entered back on June 14th, exited because of the loss of this support. And again, it's another one of those names like TLRY where we lost the daily uptrend and the weekly chart could form a higher low compared to 760. If we hold 760 and break 955, we change the weekly trend. But this bounce is much different than the bounce that took place on TLRY, and the odds of a weekly higher low forming are less likely. We didn't get over daily exponential resistance. The bull break saw no follow through, whereas TLRY got multiple legs of follow through with higher lows and higher highs. And it was also the fact that I was still sitting on some nice profit. I think I walked away with maybe 8% or so from that entry. And that looks about right. And just wanted to lock in those gains, knowing I'm playing against the longer term trends and knowing that I can always re-enter. So I am out OH, and now we're just watching, can the bulls hold the weekly support and change that weekly trend, or is it a bear flag and we're dropping down to lower lows? GTII, same boat. Daily trend change with no follow through. Now we have lost the daily uptrend, and the weekly bear flag is absolutely possible. 1305 is must hold support. We're only about 4% above that level, and it's very easily, this could be a bear flag with another leg down. Bulls have to hold 1305 and see a bull break of 14, make that 1515. But the odds are not in favor of these bulls. They have their work cut out for them for both OH and GTII, very similar setup. IAN with a bear break. So no falling wedge here, no inverse head and shoulders pattern. Pretty much on Friday, that showed me it was not likely because we had no follow through for any bull attempt to try and form that right shoulder. Closed very weak. Look at the volume. There is no volume, but there's also no bid support. I'm not interested just yet in reloading weakness. As you know, I buy oversold and I sell these short-term bounces. I have sold 3 positions on this bull move, and I have I reloaded one. Again, I'm trading ITHUF, so the levels aren't the same. I reloaded 1 position, and I have 2 more to go. And I'm not going to touch those 2 until we see daily RSI oversold and 4-hour RSI oversold, and neither of them are oversold right now. So I'm going to be watching patiently for another solid red day. Probably need another 3, 4, 5% of a pullback to get to the conditions where I would be looking to begin scaling in. And then, of course, same thing, if we get that oversold bounce, I will look to scale out on that bounce. But again, not just yet, not interested. I want to see a lot more weakness before I do get interested. TRUL, tightening daily equilibrium worth watching. We have our low, high of the bull move, higher low, lower high, and we're scouting a higher low compared to 1354. If the bulls form that higher low, we'll get nice and tight into next week, and we'll look for a break next week, which will either indicate the weekly bounce is underway or a weekly bear flag being confirmed. So again, not much indication of a momentum shift here. So what we have going on Wednesday is a hearing, a congressional hearing, where it's not if marijuana should be legalized. It's pretty much a hearing on how should we go about doing this. And they're going to potentially discuss the 4 pieces of legislation, which could reschedule marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. We've got the Safe Banking Act. I don't have all the names off the top of my head, but all of these speakers, all of the guests that are coming on to talk are all pretty much pro-MJ. So this is a noticeable step forward, but we're not seeing headlines about it, and news outlets are not picking up on it. So it's not really having a direct impact on price or these charts, but it is something to be aware of just as a potential clue in terms of timing on when we're going to get a notable shift. And again, once marijuana is rescheduled from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, it opens the floodgates for a lot of capital that's currently sitting on the sidelines. And whether or not that capital goes directly into MSOs, tough to say, but we certainly know that there will be a surge in interest and euphoria, and retail will start seeing all these headlines again, and CNBC will talk about it and all that good stuff. So that's what we're keeping an eye on. Other than that, being very patient, having a game plan established, and watching for shifts in momentum. And these shifts in momentum have happened. Let's go to CWeb, forgot CWeb. But they've happened on individual names. T-God with its one-day bull move, CWeb with its huge move. And CWeb is, again, showing us what every single individual name wants to see happen. Let's just look longer-term perspective. CWeb pulled back 57% over the span of 2.5 months. And after that happened, we then bounced 70% in essentially 3 weeks. That's the power of thinly traded stocks when momentum shifts. Now, it would be great if the whole sector were doing that rather than just one individual name, but it's a great example of how quickly things can change. CWeb, when we were at our low on June 14th, CWeb was as bearish as anybody in the sector. We had one nicely timed news release right when the bounce started going. We had a patent awarded for genetics happened July 2nd, which might have helped with this second leg up here. But the bottom line is nothing major changed in this individual name. So what we're looking at to happen for the sector as a whole is when we get a catalyst, very, very fast changes taking place and a lot of losses being made up in a short amount of time. So the question now, CWeb has topped out, in my opinion. Very clear bearish reversal candlestick. A lot of selling pressure, closed near the low. Anything above 17.14 will be a higher low on the daily time frame. Bulls have a ton of space to work with, and we're watching for the potential of hourly oversold conditions to be looking for that daily higher low to form. You can see a lot of profit-taking volume today, so that's another reason I think the temporary top is set. But again, if anybody's looking for a model of what USMJ needs to do to make these significant shifts take place, that 70% bounce certainly will do it. KSHB, again, forgot to mention, they filed for an uplisting on the NASDAQ, which has to do with this big bull volume and solid move today. And the bull's trying to form an hourly higher low. If we cannot break 541 first thing tomorrow morning, I would expect further profit taking. That's that. I hope you're doing well. I crushed my finger today. I'm about to show you some wood slabs. One of them landed right on my finger. Might lose a nail. It's getting purple, but all part of the game. See you tomorrow. Adventurous baby birds making me nervous. So we put down a crash landing pad. So raised bed update, we've got the first pathway of wood chips down. Unfortunately, we ran into a yellow jacket's nest in the grass here. So I've got a beekeeper suit on the way. Didn't get stung, fortunately, but going to have to coax them to relocate before we finish that up. Everybody thinks I have food. And we got our slabs delivered, so we're going to start putting the sides here on this raised bed, and then we'll put in some rotting wood. Went around the edge of the property, and there's tons of wood everywhere, so that'll be good. And then we'll cover that with manure, and then we'll cover the manure with straw or grass clippings or something else to keep the moisture contained and protect it from the hot sun. So now we're gonna spend today picking out the best and biggest of these slabs to make the raised beds with. And we're gonna compare. We'll do one where we use these stakes to hold it in place, and then we'll do one with screws just as a mini experiment to see how they compare.